That election in Kenya. I'm joined by Emma Gordon. She's a senior Africa analyst at Verisk Maplecroft. Thank you for being with us on France 24 tonight. How important is today's election in Kenya compared with previous ones?
Well, I think the big question with this election, as your correspondent pointed out, is whether or not it will be similar to the 2013 poll, which was seen as quite successful, it was very peaceful, or whether or not this will be closer to the 2007-2008 poll, which was associated with so much violence. Now, that election was very damaging for Kenya's economy. It had a very negative effect on Kenya's international reputation. And so the country is really hoping that by having a second successful, peaceful election, they'll be able to kind of reassure investors, tourists, and indeed their own population.
A lot of people who weren't old enough to vote in 2007 and perhaps also 2013 are voting this time around. How big a role are young voters playing this time around?
Well, purely by definition of kind of Kenya's demographics, they have a huge impact. So it's a very young country. The median age is only about 19, and an estimated, I think, 60% of the current voting population are thought to be under the age of 35. So very influential voting bloc. The difficulty is that much with any kind of voting community, it's very difficult to treat the young voters as a sort of monolithic bloc. There are a number of divides based on kind of rural or ethnic location, whether or not they live in an area where they're a minority ethnic group versus a majority ethnic group, things like that. So it's difficult to talk about how youth voting behaviour will be. Rather, it's likely to have similarities to their kind of older peers based along those various divisions. And
this election, of course, pits two main ethnic groups in Kenya against each other. Why are these tribal loyalties still so strong in Kenya?
Well, part of the problem is that the ethnic system in Kenya is very embedded. So it's not just within the political system, but also sort of in many walks of life across the economy and social areas. So many businesses will talk about preferential treatment based on their ethnic affiliation. Workers talk about discrimination in hiring policies and things like that. So many Kenyans feel that it's very important for them to have somebody from their ethnic group who's at the top of a political system in order to ensure that they have the trickle-down benefits that sort of come with that. Now, there has been talk this time around that these young voters, that they'll be less inclined to vote along those ethnic lines. We don't know if that's true. I think in urban areas that is the case, but in more rural areas, that idea of ethnic patronage is still incredibly important. Another point actually to note, sort of related to that, is that this election is not just the presidential election, it's also for regional county governments. And so what we might see is that particularly these young voters would be inclined to vote against their ethnicity in those regional elections, but they would still prefer to have somebody from their ethnic group right at the top of the pile in the presidency.
Emma Gordon, thank you very much.
My pleasure.
So